Our guest today is Michael Rushnak, a physician with a lifetime of insightful experiences with healthcare. Several years ago, after surviving a serious bout of cancer, he returned to his former passion of writing compelling stories that engage readers in a thrilling and informative way. Michael has written a medical mystery thriller trilogy called The Health Club Mysteries. His first novel, Terminal Neglect, was endorsed by New York Times best-selling author Michael Palmer as, quote, one of the very best medical thrillers I have read, not recently, ever, end quote. Isn't that's a great introduction. As the release of his second mystery thriller, The Savior Vaccine, Michael was acclaimed by the Author Show as one of the 50 great writers you should be reading. This summer, the last mystery thriller in this trilogy will be released under the title Denied. Michael has toured many states on the East Coast doing book signings and is a sought-after speaker on the nexus between the dark secrets of healthcare and the believable characters in his novels that bring to life the ongoing struggle of good versus evil in the topical healthcare issues of the day. Welcome to the show, Dr. Rushnak.
Dr. Joyce, I'm absolutely thrilled to be your guest today.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to have you. I don't think I've ever had such a famous author on before, so maybe this is the start of a new era for me. My first question I'd like to ask you is, when did you first realize that you can write? And did you have a mentor, or was there a particular person in your life who encouraged you to do this?
Back in the day, my grammar school and high school English teachers encouraged me to write. They saw in me someone with a vivid imagination and an aptitude to communicate through the written word. So I would say, Dr. Joyce, my teachers were truly my first mentors.
Well, it's always great when teachers see something in a student that they express to them so the student can take that message and work with it throughout their life. You were very fortunate to have these fine teachers. When you went to college, was it a foregone conclusion that you were going to be a doctor, or did you have to make a tough decision between your love for writing and your love for medicine?
Once I saw the medical TV shows back in the day like Ben Casey and Dr. Kildare, I was hooked. I was hooked on becoming a doctor. I was pre-med in college, thus there was simply no time those days remaining once I entered medical school to pursue my early dream of becoming an author.
Obviously, you made the right choice. Your medical experience is now being used for a writing career. I think that's terrific. After 30-plus productive years in the healthcare field, what led you back to writing?
Dr. Joyce, as you mentioned earlier in the introduction, it's been a while now, 9 years, since I was diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, cancer. Thank God I've survived and I'm feeling very well. My bout with this life-threatening illness, however, was a definite wake-up call. Life, as we know, can turn on a dime. So I decided to return to my passion of my early days in grammar school, in high school, when I used to write all the time, and I decided at this point in my life that I want to be an author of medical mystery thrillers.
Well, that's great. This message reflects a change in your belief system, I believe. Now you know the importance of living for the moment, and you made a conscious decision to move on to helping and doing good for others due to your experience. That's just great, Dr. Rushnak. Good for you. Well, where did the idea for terminal neglect come from, and how difficult was it for you to transition that idea from your mind into this unbelievably terrific novel?
In writing, authors always write what we know best, and I know healthcare. The idea for terminal neglect came from a personal experience. I was once approached in my office by an overly aggressive marketeer of a particular pharmaceutical agent. Dr. Joyce, sadly, some people in the world are more interested in profits over people. So I created a fictional setting called the Health Club. The characters in the Health Club really want more money. They stand for greed, anything but good health for their patients.
You're giving me chills, Dr. Rushnak. This is it's scary out there of the types of things that you're talking about. You bring up a good point, though, about greed. It is my belief that greed is a spiritual problem in society. Greed causes the disgraceful corporate scandals that fill our newspapers and social sites. I'm so glad that someone, you especially, are bringing this to our readership so they can recognize through the Health Club that profits should never, ever be put ahead of people.
Absolutely. And in the book, I created a character which is very similar to my own beliefs. The character is called Dr. Jonathan Rogers, who is the state health commissioner. Now, Rogers always stands for what's doing right, even at his own peril. In terminal neglect, Dr. Rogers is literally sucked into an evil plot that will literally kill tens of thousands of Americans unless he acts. The tension mounts as a member of the health club shoots Rogers after Dr. Rogers meets the President of the United States. The good news is Rogers survives. The FBI then gets involved, and they say this was a random drive-by shooting. But was it?
Typically not. Well, you seem to liken yourself to Dr. Rogers, and that's what makes terminal neglect so compelling. You were put on this earth, Dr. Rushnak, to help society, and I commend you for that. Fans have asked if there are any plans to bring your books on the big screen, and who would you like to see play the part of Dr. Jonathan Rogers?
My agent has actually been approached by a venture capital company who believes my entire trilogy could be made into 3 movies. Personally, I would love to see an actor like Harrison Ford play the part of Dr. Rogers.
Well, this is just fascinating. Your novels will make great screenplays. I hope Harrison Ford will listen and consider playing the part of Dr. Rogers. Our team of authors will just have to tweet him until he does it with the suggestion when you're ready to tell your story on the big screen. Tell me more about the Savior vaccine. I read it and I couldn't put it down.
Well, thank you, Dr. Joyce. I really appreciate that. In this thriller, The Savior Vaccine, America is under attack. Terrorists are using small nuclear devices to, again, kill many, many Americans. But the good news that comes out in the book is that an American scientist develops a vaccine against the deadly effects of radiation. The scientist calls this the Savior Vaccine. But not so fast. The Surgeon General, Dr. Rogers, uncovers evidence that this vaccine may not be safe. Yet the government insists that every American be vaccinated with the Savior Vaccine. So the reader must really decide who you would trust, the politicians or the Surgeon General, Dr. Rogers.
Oh, I never, ever would trust a politician. But I don't want to give away your book. It's such a good book. I just want to highly recommend it to our listeners. And stay tuned, as Michael will be giving his contact information out at the end of the show. For your loyal fans, how soon can we expect to see the 3rd book in the Health Club Mysteries Fictional Trilogy?
My 3rd book, called Denied, will be coming out this summer. And Denied is a thriller about how many mentally ill people in our society, especially in high positions of authority, actually are denied care for their mental illness, and how the people around them sometimes actually enable their mentally ill behavior by not paying attention to the red flags that these people frequently exhibit. So in Denied, when bad things are unleashed by mentally ill people, unfortunately, the choice sometimes comes down to be revenge on these ill folks. And in my book, Denied, it really talks about whether we have a choice, number 1, to help these people, number 2, not to enable them, number 3, to not really seek revenge when we have not played an active part in trying to help them. And the last, which is always so important, and it's very hard, and we all struggle with this, but in the book there's a lot of discussion and tension around the issue of forgiveness.
Well, that's really necessary in our society today. There's just not enough forgiveness, and there's too much anger. But, wow, I'm really looking forward to reading Denied. That really sounds like the end of a great trilogy for you. While I know that you are still very active in the healthcare field, how has your transition from doctor and healthcare professionalism to author changed your life?
Dr. Joyce, that's a great question. I live, as you mentioned earlier, since my bout of cancer, living in the moment. So, number one, being an author, and the last several years, I'm really so happy to engage with the public, living in the moment, and not worrying about the past. And my wife, I'm so happy, has been my chief cheerleader. She's been a major help in the constructive feedback of my writing, because authors know that writing is really rewriting. And each of my books, I must have written and rewritten 100 times or more to make sure that the best they could possibly be. So on my book tour, on our signings, my wife frequently accompanies me so we can really go out and meet the public. And so I think that has really had a profound change on my life of coming out of the medical office, seeing one patient at a time, and literally going out and meeting thousands of people and being on great shows like yours where I could talk to your listeners, and hopefully they'll check my books out.
I'm sure that they will. I'm just not I'm amazed by the stories that you've created. And you are indeed fortunate to have such a wonderful team person where each person in a marriage supports one another in whatever it is they want to do. And I've been lucky to have someone always support me in my endeavors as well. Michael, you are such a talented and insightful man with wonderful stories based on your own experiences to share with our listeners worldwide. May I ask if you have any suggestions to give to prospective writers when they begin to write a novel of their own?
Yes, I think that writers have to realize that writing sometimes can be a very solitary experience. Sometimes, if you will, a little bit lonely until you finally have a finished manuscript and a publisher willing to put your books out there into the marketplace. And that's when it's really exciting for me to actually, as I mentioned earlier, to meet the public. But during the writing phase, there are countless hours spent at the computer making sure that the message is crystal clear. And in my novels, they're medical thrillers. And one of the factors that separates a thriller from a mystery is that unless the hero acts, many, many people will die. So unlike a murder mystery where there could be one or two people involved, in thrillers, it literally could be thousands, or in the Savior vaccine, when they're exposed to nuclear radiation, it could be millions of people. So I would encourage writers, number one, to realize that writing is hard, it's hard work, but it can be done. But you need to have a great imagination. You really need to know the tools to be able to communicate. I would suggest to them to attend workshops. Personally, I have done so. Michael Palmer gives an annual course for physicians actually interested in writing fiction. And I once attended that course and wrote Terminal Neglect 3 years after. And I learned so much from Dr. Palmer. So I would encourage all your prospective writers really to do their homework, to make sure they have the basic tools, and then to write the best book they can, and then to go out and talk about it, just like shows like yours.
Well, I think that definitely you need to add good English skills to that. You have to be a willing student, and you need to listen and learn, which is what you did. I don't think people realize how difficult it is to write a book. Having written books myself, 100 times is common to look over a book to see whether it's just right, and even then maybe a comma will be not put where it was supposed to be put, or something would not be right in it. But people don't care about that so much as your imagination and making them feel like they're somewhere else while they're reading. And your books certainly do that. So I congratulate you on all 3 books, because that's an amazing accomplishment, especially for somebody that's come out of a illness that made you have to rethink your life, and then you go and writing books and they become so successful. So if no one else has said this to you, Michael Rushnak, I am proud of you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Joyce. I really thank God again for the opportunity to be a survivor and to be able to live out my early dream and passion of writing. I mean, to have two careers in life, where one could be a physician and save lives for so many years, and now to be able to reach out literally and in the print media to be able to actually communicate a lot of these experiences, as you mentioned earlier, my insights, some of the secrets, quite frankly. I do know what they call the good, the bad, and the ugly of our healthcare system. And if you read my trilogy, you'll be experiencing a lot of thrills.
I've already experienced some, not with the book tonight because I haven't read it yet, but I just think that you're a fantastic writer, and that is what you were meant to be, a writer, so that you can share so much. But having had the experience of being a doctor, having the experience of going through cancer, that together, along with being a writer, what a great winning combination. Please tell our listeners how they can reach you and purchase your fabulous books. They are indeed nail biters that had me on the edge of my seat. Well,
thank you again, Dr. Joyce. Your readers and listeners can reach me at my website, which is www.michaelrushnakbooks.com. My books are available everywhere in both print and e-books. They're available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, and available on your Kindle, Nook, iPad. So literally, readers can reach me through many different ways, give me their comments, and hopefully purchase the trilogy, which I promise you will be inspired, and you will certainly be thrilled.
I certainly recommend this to all of the listeners out there, and please feel free to contact Dr. Rushnak because he's a storehouse of information and a good friend. I would like to just say to you, Dr. Rushnak, that I really enjoyed speaking with you today. Thank you so much for being our guest today on the ImageMaker Presents.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce. It's been a pleasure.